I have finally given in to peer pressure and I've done something that you've all been asking for. I've bought a Japanese superbike and it's a complete wreck. So we've picked up this 2023 Yamaha R1. It's a stock R1. Picked it up at auction yesterday and I thought I had a bargain, and that's until I looked a little bit deeper. And that's because this bike was actually classed as a repairable write-off, which means I can put it back on the road or I can build a track bike. But I think those options have narrowed somewhat because I've found some damage that I think the insurance company missed. So let me show you what I mean, because this bike has actually got a small amount of structural damage. Just here, there's actually a section where it's ripped out the frame slider out of the frame, and it's taken a part of the actual thread and a little bit of the edge of the frame just there with it. So this makes my decision a little bit harder, and I wanted to put the decision to you guys. So the real decision is, do I build a road bike or do I build another track bike? And there's some pros and cons to each, so let's go through them. Okay, but first let's run through some of the damage. The entire front frame, front subframe, front fairing is completely destroyed. The mirrors, you can see the one on the left is pretty badly scratched up, that would need replacing. The one on the right actually looks like it's okay, but the entire front fairing is gone. So that includes the actual front subframe. So the subframe that holds the dash in place is broken, completely snapped off in the top here. And the dash, when I got the bike, was actually zip tied to the back mudguard. So I had to reinstall that just to check and see if we even had a dash that worked, because that would have been another $1,000 to $2,000. What else? Come back further here. The left-hand side of the bike has had a massive, massive hit, and it's actually twisted this bar backwards. So all of the controls on this bar can't be trusted, so I'm going to assume that the actual clip-on here is completely bent. So a new clip-on on the left-hand side. The rear subframe has been snapped in half. So I think the bike has probably flipped over onto its left-hand side, and just here where it's supposed to join is completely snapped. So the frame is twisted and snapped right here. Which means if you look at the bike lengthways, the front of the bike, so the tank, looks like it's pretty straight, but this section at the back is actually twisted. So I'm gonna need a new rear subframe, and that's not ideal and it's not cheap. A lot of the actual switches, the plugs on the left-hand side here are damaged. So hopefully I can salvage some of these, but you can see just there how that plug itself is still held together, but it's not too great. So I'm gonna need to double check all of the loom all the way through the left-hand side of the bike. All of the fairing on the left-hand side of the bike is damaged. Most of it was just hanging off the bike when I got the bike. So even to get the bike on the trailer from the salvage yard, I had to take all the loose bits of plastic off it. The engine guard on the left-hand side here, I think this is the alternator cover. This has also had a massive scrape. As have the rear sets. So the rear sets have just taken a massive pounding on the road. So you can see these are ground right down to nothing. We're gonna get rid of these rear sets anyway because they are stock and we don't like to do things stock. So that's just a touch of what's wrong with this bike. Let's have a look at some of the good things. Pretty obviously, one of the best things is this bike is almost new, and I was hoping it had done really low kilometers. But after plugging the dash in, it's actually done 20,000 K. So again, not an overly bad thing, but it's gonna influence our decision for road or track. But it's a 2023 model bike, so this is probably the newest build I think I've ever done. Aside from that, The frame itself looks like it's straight if we disregard the front frame and the rear subframe. It's got, if you pop around here and have a look, what looks to be a full SC Project titanium system. So I'm not sure if these came out stock with titanium headers or what, but look at that. And this thing looks like it's hardly touched, even though the rear set on this side has also took a grinding in the crash. Another good thing is the engine on this side looks like it's perfect. So once we put some engine guards on there, that'll be a job done. I would love to do a clear clutch cover, but I can't find one. So let me know in the comments if you know anyone that does an R1 clear clutch cover. So if I can sort out that frame issue, which I'm hoping is nowhere near as big as I think it is, and if I can replace the rear subframe and the front subframe, that'll be my biggest issue sorted. And then really it's down to you guys as to what you think I should do, road or track. So I've also just put a new battery in because the old battery was completely dead. And I'll put a little bit of fuel in the tank. I don't want to go too crazy. I've already got some oil and oil filter to do a quick service on this bike, because if we can get it running, that is a major, major selling point. I mean, if the insurance company says it's repairable, then it's got to run, yeah? It does come with a key, although the key is bent. Okay, so we've got dash power. And it all looks to be perfect there, but will the bike actually start? Keep your fingers crossed. And this is going to be loud too, by the way. Okay, I'm going to open the garage door. That is super loud, but it starts and the lights work, which is a massive bonus, because if I do decide to build a track bike build, I could sell those lights for about $1,000. Okay, let's try that again. I'm not gonna run it too long, and it's smoky as hell in here, but that sounds awesome. That is super, super loud. I'm guessing this pipe is pretty much just a straight pipe all the way through to the headers. So yeah, we've got a bit of smoke coming out the rear. Right, so next up, we're gonna strip the bike down, see what's salvageable, see what's not, because I can guarantee you there is a lot more that is not salvageable than I was originally intending, that came from the salvage report. Fingers crossed. Now stop me if this sounds stupid, but this rear frame, if I was to put this back on track, this tiny little connection piece here isn't actually doing anything, because it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 struts across the subframe which hold it together anyway. And it's only this tiny little back section here which is twisted. So I'm wondering if I can get something in here and twist it back. Look at that, it's already straight. So that might save me $700. So this is pretty much everything I've taken off the bike so far. I don't think I'll strip it down any further just yet. We're gonna wait for parts. But the story is not good. So the one thing I was hoping would be salvageable is this headlight. Unfortunately, the edge of the park light is cracked and all of the housing is also cracked. So it's got multiple cracks throughout here. You can see here it's not even held together. Super expensive part of kit. So the problem with Australia is that if I want to put this bike back on the road, I have to use OEM genuine Yamaha parts to pass inspection. Now, that alone, full setup there is about $2 grand. For the wing mirrors, I've got to get new wing mirrors as well because the right-hand one is completely busted. I've got to get new screen. And pretty much all of the fairings are in this state where they are cracked, smashed, and all the fixtures and fittings are broken. So I'm gonna say pricing up this build has just gone up by about $3,000 if we want to put it back on the road. And that's not ideal. So I am leaning towards a track bike build, but again, I haven't made that decision yet. So we're gonna continue on with cleaning this bike, getting it ready. I'm not gonna worry about filming that for you, but in the meantime, I'm gonna start ordering some parts, the essential parts that I need. So hope you enjoyed this. It's gonna be an awesome build series. We're still gonna think about the design. I've got some ideas in my head, but I won't share them just yet. And yeah, if you can think of where I can get that clear clutch cover, let me know. Drop a comment as well if your vote is to track bike it or to road bike it. And stay tuned, like, subscribe, you know the drill. Thank you for watching. We are back, baby, and it's been 5 weeks since we started this project. We have been waiting on parts ever since. So now we can get into it. But there was a huge decision we left with you guys at the end of the last episode that was road or race. And before the end of this episode, you're gonna know the decision. So stay tuned. So this build has quickly become make or break because we are working on such a tight budget. We've just dropped 10K in performance parts and I don't even have any money left if this frame can't be fixed. So let's get into it. So first up, we've got to eat the frog and what's the other one? Elephant in the room. I have no idea what the sayings are, but I've got to do the hardest job first, which is this. This is where the frame protectors come off and it's ripped this entire bolt out of the housing. Now I think some of the thread inside there in the actual engine, the top of the engine, is probably still okay, but there's a chance I'll have to re-thread it. So what I've done is I've gone to Yamaha and I've bought an OEM bolt, exactly what I need because I don't want to half-ass this, for each side. So I'm going to replace them on both sides. I might have to jack this engine up slightly because it's not really aligned with where it needs to be. And fingers crossed this works, because if this doesn't work, I'm in a world of pain. And there's a very small chance I'll have to replace the actual head of the engine. So I've got my little magnet. I'm just going to try and see if I can get all the little pieces of metal out of there first. You can see that that magnet's got stuff all over it. You can see little loose bits of thread in there as well. See that? Tiny little loose bits of thread, not ideal. I really don't want them ending up ruining my frame, ruining my engine. So far so good. It looks like that bolt's going in. So before I go any further, I'm gonna pull it back out and we're gonna literally layer it up with red Loctite and put it back in the whole way. I don't want to ever touch this bolt again. I know if my mechanic is watching this, he will be horrified how much Loctite I've just used, but well, that was a bit of a non-event, but that's pretty awesome. They're both actually fine. So I took this crappy stopper frame slider off this side as well, because let's face it, they often do more damage than good. So now it's nice and smooth. It also means that the fairing, once we put the fairing on, will go on a lot easier. So I think the next thing you do is start giving the bike a clean down, because there's nothing worse than working on a bike that's dirty, and it's so much easier to have a nice, beautiful, clean workspace. So I'm just going to give the whole bike a real quick clean. I'm also going to do the oil and filter at the same time. That looks super easy. then I just gave the oil a quick inspection with my magnet to see if there's anything in there which shouldn't be in there. Obviously not that massive big bit of metal I pulled out that was already in my can. But the end of my magnet looks pretty clean, so that's good.
You better grab that tambourine, bring the bass, we might be wicked. We may be forced to cause.
So you won't believe this, the most simple problem, getting the oil filter off, is causing me dramas. So I need a special tool for that. In the meantime, let's move on to something a bit more fun. Come with me. We have got a new channel sponsor. So pop in here, have a look. Carbon Fiber. We have finally got someone to, I won't say endorse, but help our channel out with carbon fiber. So this is Maxi Carbon. It's an Italian company, and let me tell you, the quality looks awesome. So their website, Maxi Carbon, jump on there and you can literally select any bike you like, modern sports bike, and they've got a really good range of carbon fiber. All I can say is this is the first time I've ordered from them. Everything arrived within 10 days from Europe to Australia. So I can only imagine it's pretty quick to the Americas as well. And we're gonna go ahead and install some of this now that the bike is a little bit cleaner, because as you guessed it, pretty much every bike I build lately is just loaded with carbon fiber. So let's do that. So this stuff looks pretty awesome. Now, normally when I put this stuff on, I've used double-sided 3M tape. Today we're gonna do things a bit different. We're gonna use 221 Sikaflex. This is not the cheap stuff. This is actually quite expensive, but this is what's gonna bond and hold in behind here, hold the whole thing on. And once we bond it and we put it on, we're gonna hold it on with zip ties for the first 24 hours, just to let that Sikaflex or silicone, whatever you call it, just to sort of set and form that bond. Yeah, that's gonna look pretty good. Okay, so we've got a front guard, which looks wicked. It's got this really cool mesh built into it. And again, super sturdy, like really, really sturdy carbon fiber. The rear swing arm guards for both sides. We've got the tank with the extender on it. So that's gonna look awesome. It's gonna make the bike look a lot more racy. And then we've got the guards as well. There is one more piece coming, which is the rear hugger. They didn't have it in stock, so they sent it 3 days later at their own cost. So how good is that? So I've got about half the carbon on the bike and it is looking smoking hot. So thank you, Maxi Carbon. Wow, absolute wow. But the biggest question, road or race? Let's get into it. Now, if you caught the thumbnail, you'll notice I'm basically saying I need a lot of views to build this into a road bike because of the cost difference is around about $6,000. So here's what I'm thinking. Why don't we just do both? Yeah, I know that sounds mental, but to be honest, the biggest difference is actually just the fairing and the lights, because I've actually already got all the parts for this bike. I ordered them all from Italy, and the street versus race isn't really too different. So I'm thinking if I can get my hands on a really good set of R1 fairings, I don't even need a full fairing, I only need some of the pieces, then maybe after we've put this bike on track and done some testing, I can actually reverse this into a street bike and do a bit more of a street bike build as well. Just a thought, it's an option and maybe it'll work. Okay, next up, I've got this package from Smart Moto. This is my package of deletes. I've got an AIS delete kit. So I've got the block off plugs there, the block off plates, I should say. I've got a stand delete and something else. I can't even remember what I ordered at this point, but there's a few deletes. I've got to get the airbox off. I've got to get under that. It's not a small job, let's do it. So an AIS delete basically is recirculating unspent gases. So it's pushing it back into the engine to be recombusted and thus meeting emission standards. We don't need it. It's going to get rid of some weight. Let's get rid of it. But it's not an easy job. We've got to take the top of the airbox off, and then we've got to take the bottom of the airbox off, which means I've got to take the stacks out and then just unplug a few extra little bits off the bottom of the airbox, and then that exposes the actual plug, the plates. I'm gonna replace those plates with the Smart Moto plates that I've been provided, and that's also gonna strip around about probably 300 to 400 grams of weight off this bike. So there it is in there, that whole unit there with these two block offs. See that plate there and that plate over there? That is your AIS system. Now this feeds back into this plug just here. We're gonna block that plug off, so we're gonna take that off and then take this whole unit out, put the new block off plates in place, so these ones in its place, and then block off that plug. Put it all back together and then job done. Stacks go back on. Okay, just make sure they still work. Boom. Job done. Put the airbox top back on. I've still got this filter, which I actually think is pretty good. I mean, I'm gonna replace it anyway as soon as the new filter arrives, but for now, I'm just gonna sit it back in here. Nope, it's gotta go there. It's gotta go. Little hooks. Nope, how does that go in? Oh my God. Yes, it does. Hooks go in there, and there. Job done. Cover back on, 8 screws or 10 screws back in that, and that's another job done. Saturday nights, this is what I live for. Actually, I don't, I'd rather be on the clubs partying, but I'm too old. So I now have this. This is a complete AIS delete kit. eBay, $127 around about, that's what I'm gonna list it for. But my next problem is actually this, and I don't think that my forks are straight in the triples. So I'm gonna loosen the triples off, straighten up the forks, start putting some more carbon fiber on this bike. Okay, here's an easy way to test whether or not you've got a straight front end. And I've just manipulated it a bit, but I still don't think it's perfect. So it looks like I am actually quite straight. Okay, cool. But I think we're gonna take the front apart anyway and get the suspension serviced and checked. And then when we put it back together, probably down at either Moto Garage or Moto Logic, we'll just double check to make sure everything's straight before we go on track. Cool. More carbon fiber. So look at this beauty. That is gonna look very good. So I bought a new front frame. I bought it off somewhere super cheap, but it should be all we need to do to get everything up and running again. Okay, it's time to break out the big guns. We've got a full race fairing kit from Pro Fiber. Jump on their site, they sell some pretty awesome fairings and pretty quick to deliver too, to be honest. Yeah, good quality, nice and sturdy, easy to apply as well. So we're gonna do a mock-up. Now, before all our performance parts arrive, yeah, I'm just sort of talking it over in my head. We got a big box of performance parts arriving, pretty much everything you can think of. Before I put all that on there, which I'm gonna have to strip the bike down for anyway, again, why don't we do a mock-up just so we can see how this actually looks? Yeah, let's do that.
If I should fall, just go ahead, go and catch me, baby.
Okay, it's 11:30 p.m. I'm done for the night. We've got a pretty good mock-up going on here. Yes, there's a little bit of white tape at the back holding it together, but that's okay. Look, fingers crossed this box of goodies is gonna be here tomorrow or Monday, and we're gonna bang out this episode, all of the performance gear on it. Hopefully, if not, then this will be it, but we're getting there. We're getting some progress. I'm also thinking I might even have some of the paint ready for this bike. So I'm gonna dig into my paint supply. I've built enough bikes now that I've actually got a residual amount of paint just sitting there. I might be able to save myself a few $100s, which means I can probably put the money into something like a full ABS delete instead. But it's looking pretty cool, it's looking pretty aggressive. Just gotta fix those front forks, straighten them up a little bit. Yeah, just some fine tuning. And then the pain of actually installing this fairing properly. Right. Welcome back, guys. Episode 3, and this episode is the one that I get excited about, and so should you. And so stay tuned, because by the end of this episode, you're gonna know pretty much where we're headed with this build. So in the previous episodes you watched as we stripped this bike down, we got rid of most of the things we didn't need on this bike, some extra weight, some of the extra pieces of broken road fairing, and we've done a mock-up. So we've got our carbon fiber on the bike, and we've got our new Pro Fiber racing fairing mocked up. There's only a couple of final bits of fitment ready to go at the back. Before we go any further, the first thing I want to do is give this bike a pressure wash. Now I've given it a bit of a detail wash by hand, but let's just give this bike a good pressure wash down and clean it up even better. So the bike's back on the lift, and now we've got this huge table full of gear again, all performance goodies, Jet Prime, Light Tech, Sprint filter, you name it. So long story short, I need to make about $900 to finish this bike because I'm in the red by $900. So every part that I take off today, I'm gonna put straight on eBay and try and make some money back, starting with the switchgear. And I think combined, I can probably get around about $300 for this switchgear. So let's get into it. So let's take a look at what we've got. We've got a Jet Prime kill switch. So just a regular red start stop switch. We've got the left side switch block, that's a racing switch block, and we've got the right side integrated throttle. I wanted the integrated ones pretty similar to this. If you look at the Panigale here, you've got the exact same integrated switch block, how it works with the throttle. Looks very, very cool. We're gonna do the exact same thing on this bike. So first job I gotta do, obviously, is take this old switchgear off. It's pretty easy, you just unscrew it from the back and then slide it out, but you've also gotta unclip it. And to be honest, this is gonna be a lot easier if I actually just take this whole nose cone off. So tracing this cable down from the top, it looks like it comes down in one big cable, then splits into two, so I've just gotta cut that zip tie off, and then I've got two plugs that it goes into, right here and here. So, time to get cutting. One and two. Job done. So that, I reckon, will sell, like I said, as a pair for about 300. There is a minor little chip in the high beam, but other than that, she's good to go, fully working order. And it should be as simple as undo the bolts at the back on the new Jet Prime module. So the clutch side is the easy side to do. It's quite simply take off, put on, plug and play. The throttle side is a lot more difficult. There's a lot more plugs that have to come out. You've got to take them out of the same space where the rig rec is housed on the left-hand side. And then pretty simple, same process, undo the mounts. There should be 3 or 4 screws, and that'll loosen the whole thing off, including the actual throttle connection tube. You want to keep that because we're going to use that on our new piece. Okay, here's the problem. I need to get these 2 screws off without damaging the housing. And then this, as you'll see, the throttle, the silver section, fits neatly in here. It, however, does not need these screw mounts again. So maybe I can just drill them out, because all of my little ends that I've got here, none of them match that crazy little Yamaha specific tool that does that. So I'm gonna try and drill these out and see if that works, and hopefully this whole throttle just falls out. Okay, so this is actually pretty easy to put together. You've just got to stack it. So put your throttle in to the housing, put the cords through the little slot in the top housing, and then slide it all into place like that. And then you've got 3 screws which hold it together. And then we want all of our cables to go through that fork leg, through here. So how much better does that look? Fully integrated, way, way better. All of my buttons here, my modes, my on, off, everything. I've still got to do our start, stop, and then we're going to put our colors on here, so our M&M buttons. Now I've just got everything sitting loosely over the back here, and that's partly because I've actually got a new one of these. This whole bracket is being replaced, and I've got that sitting over here in a bag. So direct from Yamaha, OEM Yamaha part, and this is the bracket which goes right here. So it's going to house all of this. I'm going to bring these wires through here. I'm not going to worry about trying to push them through. I'm going to actually, when I take this top triple off to do the ignition, I'm going to lay everything down over the top so it's much, much neater. I'm going to zip tie all of that together and then put this all back the way that it was supposed to be. Put it into the side of the radiator just there, and then everything here will be nice and neat, because at the moment it looks like a dog's breakfast. Let's push pause just for 1 second because I bought the wrong start-stop switch. I have put all of this wiring back together properly and I've zip tied it all in place with a new reg rectifier mount as well. So that's all done and looking way better. And I just want to take this moment to say, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so, because that's going to be whether or not I keep going in 2025 if we start to see some growth. So please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification as well, just so you get reminded every time I drop a new video. But next up, we are going to attack the back of this bike for a little bit before we move on to some more performance goodies with an ABS delete. So let's take a look at what we've got. This is what we're going to get into. This is our Litec chain adjusters. So whilst I've got the back of the bike all raised up, I'm just going to undo the rear axle, get the wheel off, and then we're going to replace these original stop blocks with this set of Litec adjustable blocks. And these things are, well, they're a hell of a lot easier to adjust and they look sick once they're on. Let's do it. Now I've just got to undo this adjuster bolt, so take this whole piece out and we replace this whole piece with what's in here. So pretty straightforward. Once you've repeated the exact same process on the other side, I've set both of these with the center line at 25, which should allow me to get this axle back in. And what I might do before I put this axle in is I might actually grease it just a little bit. Again, you don't need too much, don't go overkill, just a little bit. So here's the beautiful thing about these is the adjustment is super easy. Look at that, chain tightening already. Just match the exact notches on the other side. That looks awesome. That looks so much better. I could probably polish that up a little bit, just the end of the axle, just to look a little bit better. But yeah, another thing done. I'm gonna have to replace that chain. That chain is horrible. So I know what you're thinking. I haven't finished all of the actual handlebar control area. We're gonna come back to that because, like I said, I need to salvage some parts off this bike. I reckon I can probably sell these rear sets for maybe $200, even though the actual pegs are a little bit smashed up. I can probably just take the pegs off or sell them and just let them know in the description that the pegs are buggered. But more Litec goodness from Omnia Racing. So we've got fully adjustable racing rear sets. Let's get them on. I do love the boxing of these. Look at that, all the individual little compartments. Everything is foam encased as well. It's so well put together. And you know that when you're opening something and it's this well organized, that the machining is probably perfect. So super straightforward. I'm just gonna start by replacing one rear set at a time. So I'm gonna start with the clutch side, 2 large bolts holding that on. I'm gonna take those off. I'm just gonna hold on to those 2 main bolts for a second because I think I might have to reuse them. And then I'm just gonna take the shift arm off as well because the Litec system comes with a new shift arm. And then I'm gonna use the 2 new bolts provided, a little bit of blue Loctite, and bam, these new Litec ones have gone on super easy. And then it's on with the heel guards and the footrest. I make sure I use a little bit of blue Loctite on this and then torque them down to spec. This has got to be the easiest set of rear sets I've ever put on. Okay, there we go. Probably just got to play with the ergonomics a little bit. Okay, so the rear sets are on and they look awesome, absolutely shit hot. But now I've got the huge job of doing an ABS delete on this baby. And there's 2 ways you can do an ABS delete on an R1. You can buy the ABS LTOM removable like ECU plug. It's about $500. Plus you need to buy race lines. They're about $300 on average. And you've got to do it all. That's about $800. Or if you don't care about the 1 pound weight of the ABS motor, which sits just here under the seat, you can do this. You can buy HEL brake lines. I got these from Moto Garage in Brisbane. And basically these come as a complete kit, 2 front, 1 rear, including the block off plugs for the ABS module. Yes, the ABS motor, you can remove, whoops, you can remove the pipes, the lines out of the top of it and put block off plugs in its place. We'll get into it in a sec, but that's the way we're going because what's a pound? 2 glasses of water? I would fluctuate way more than that on any given day. So on a hot track day, my body weight's gonna go up and down, probably 3 or 4 kilos. So I really don't care about a 1 pound weight sitting in the back of the bike. It's not gonna make a difference for someone of my riding style, my riding ability, I should say. So let's get into it. This is a freaking humongous job. So first things first, I've got to strip this bike down. Tank's got to come off, seat's got to come off, rear section's got to come off. Okay, so let's take a look inside. And you'll notice, actually, anyone with a keen eye, that I've got yellow race lines. Yes, there is a yellow theme to this bike. And I might as well tell you now that the wheels are going to Medina yellow, which is the exact same yellow on the racing stripe on the Ferrari Panigale. So we are reutilizing some of our existing paint just to save a bit of money, but because I think it'll look cool as well. So I'm going to take you through more of the design stuff later, but let's just say relatively light colored fairing with some pretty cool Yamaha decals on it. We're calling this bike the R1X because it's a race version of an R1. It's not an R1M, it is distinctly different. And it's my version of an R1, so I can call it whatever the hell I want. And we're going with yellow wheels. So relatively light colored white, pearl, and light blue fairing with some elements of metallic gray as well. But yeah, let's get back into it. So what we're looking for is 2 things. This is our ABS module just here, the motor. And these 4 little plugs with the copper washers, we're gonna undo these. We're gonna leave the actual fluid, the brake fluid in there, just to keep a little bit of pressure going. And then we're gonna plug each of these into each of those 4 holes. That takes care of that unit. That unit stays in place. And then if you can see through there, that is all the ABS lines which need to come off. We've also got the brake lines on the front. So they go all the way up through here. Here's the brake lines on both sides. They go all the way up through. They split off. They go in behind here, in behind the frame. They follow that through, you can see just there, and then they come all the way back to the motor itself. All of that has to come out. And it basically means that I can either try and salvage it and sell it on eBay, or I could be brutal and just use my wire cutters, because I don't think I will get much for them anyway, and just cut it out. So I'm gonna take the airbox out again, or maybe some of it, start cutting, start undoing, do the exact same process with the back, although it is more accessible. You'll see that I've just got my line coming off the top of my master cylinder here. That goes up to the back and then comes all the way back down. So that's a little bit easier to do. Okay, all done and they're out. And these are the 2 critters I was telling you about. They are just metal. They are rock solid. You've got to bend them to get them out. You've got to take 3 brackets out, 2 along the side of the frame and 1 up the front under the stem. So now that that's out, we've got the airbox, the lower airbox back in, all connected back up, and we're gonna put a new sprint filter in this baby. Old filter, look at that, pretty average. Brand new filter, and it's not the papery kind as well. It's actually like a much freer flowing filter. More power, more air, more stuff. Okay, ABS, huge progress done. I've just got to clean this front up, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about this lever because I can't get it into the position I want and for it still to work without knocking at the top. So I need to put some more thought into exactly how I'm going to run these front lines. But the back line is also in, and all of our deletes are in. So all of our block off plugs on the motor itself are in. Our cables are removed from the inside. A new sprint filter is put in place. Over here, we've got all of our ABS lines sitting there, done. So these can either go on eBay or who knows, they're probably not worth anything. But we are chewing through our parts pretty quickly. You'll see on the table behind me, it's looking a little bit messy, but most of that stuff is now installed. We've now got two more things we've got to quickly do before we can move on to design and mocking this bike up. Let's take a look. This is something I do on pretty much every build. I put one of these on. This is a quick charger. So I'm just going to connect this to the positive and negative on the battery. It means I can keep the trickle charger going all the time on this bike when it's not being used, and that'll just conserve the battery. So we'll put that on, it takes 2 seconds. And then I've got what's in this box here. And this is again something I do quite regularly, especially for a race bike. GB Racing engine covers. Again, I'm not even gonna film this because it's so easy, but we're just gonna put them on. Make sure you torque them down to spec as well, which I think is either 10 or 12 Newton meters. And make sure, I've learned this the hard way, make sure the little metal spaces are in each screw hole, because if you don't, they will compress and you'll lose the torque on the bolt. So even though I bought the wrong start-stop button, I bought the one for the YEC harness, the Yamaha racing harness, I'm gonna go ahead and use it anyway. And I'm gonna show you how. Basically, on the end of this plug, I think the plug is the only difference for the actual button itself, because the button fundamentally wouldn't be any different. You wouldn't make two buttons for two different harnesses. The button would be the same, the connection would be different. So all I'm gonna do is on the end of this piece here, I'm gonna cut the cable, cut this off, join it back together so it's got the correct plug on it. Fingers crossed, that's all I need to do. First though, I've got to drill out these security bolts. Okay, that's separated now. I need to keep this is the receiver, and this back piece here. So this is all joined in. It's just a couple of Allen keys to get those off. Unplug this, and then I think we're good to go. So that's the plug that we're going to transplant. I'm going to cut it off up here, and that way this plug will plug into just here. Perfect. Yes, and it works. Check this out. Look at that, we've got a dash, which means we've got full power, which means my little cheap workaround actually worked. So, yet another massive, epic episode is done. I'm gonna have to do one extra episode. I didn't think I would, but postage is taking so long to get stuff here. A little bit of carbon left to come. I'm still waiting for the screen to get here as well to do that mock-up. That's pretty cool, it's an MRA screen, but we've got heaps done today. So going from the back to the front, we've got the Litec chain tensioners, we've got the quick charge unit, we've got the yellow braided lines from HEL Moto Garage. We've got the Litec fully adjustable rear sets, so they are installed. I think I've got to switch them to race though. We've got the full ABS delete throughout the bike, including the block-off plugs for the ABS kit. We've got the new P08 sprint filter air filter in there. We've got all of the cockpit work done. So we've got the kill switch, which we managed to do a bit of a jimmy on. We've got the left and the right side race integrated buttons. We've got the domino grips. We've got the monkey bones bar ends. We've got at the front, we've got the yellow front braided brake lines, ABS delete. We've got the GB Racing engine cover kit, full kit, and that's all done. We've given the bike a good clean, done some new fluids as well, which I didn't show you, but that's massive. So next episode, what we're gonna do is rebuild the bike back up with the fairing, start working on the fairing and start working on the colors. I'm gonna give you a sneak peek now as to some of those colors, but that's it. I hope you like this type of video. If you do, please hit the subscribe button. We need your support to keep growing and continue making videos in 2025. So bring it on. So this is the color chart. Yes, I know it looks like finger painting 101, but this is Medina yellow. So that's the Ferrari color. This is a really cool blue we had done up some time ago for a cafe racer that we built. We never used it. So that's a really cool blue. See close up, it's really nice. It's a flat color. We're not gonna use that green gold color, don't worry about that. But then we're using this. This is the rest of the Audi gray, metallic gray. So we're gonna use these two, blue and gray together as accents through the middle of the bike. Yellow for the wheels, and then the rest of the bike is gonna be pearl white. And that's it. And that is a cloud with an elephant flying through it. If you look closely, squint your eyes. Peace out. Our custom R1 is in the final stages of the build. And by the end of this episode, we should have all of this gear back on the bike and a functionally complete superbike build. So first up, it's off to Moto Garage. Get these tires stripped off these wheels so we can prep these wheels, get them ready for paint. The first thing I'm gonna do is strip them right down. Anything that doesn't need to stay on the wheel is coming off, and then I'm gonna degrease these wheels, pressure wash them, coat them in soap, anything I can do to get these wheels as clean as possible for the first couple of coats of undercoat primer fillet. And at the same time, I'm gonna try and straighten up this front end. First thing I'm gonna do is measure top to bottom on either side of the forks and check to see if this lower triple is bent at all. It's not far off, but I've just gotta make sure it's perfect. And then I'm gonna loosen off all the bolts to the triple, start loosening off the actual forks and see if they are bent at all. If they are, I'll have to replace the fork tubes. Fingers crossed I can fix this thing. Now I will send this bike away to get properly tested for straighteners, just like we have before with this type of micrometer, but for now I'm just going to do a layman's check. 3 more hours, that's how much time I have just spent cleaning these wheels. So all up, 5 to 6 hours of cleaning to get them looking like this. Now I've got them on my little homemade spinner machine. It's not really a machine, but these are nice and easy to work with now. I've got blue tack in the spaces where I don't want to get paint, and I'm good to go. 2 coats of primer, sand after the final coat of primer, wet sand to about 1200 to 2000, 3 coats of top coat, and then probably 3 coats of either gloss or satin clear. Let's get after it. Well, it's probably the worst painting I've ever done in my entire life, but the wheels are primed and they are good to go. So I'm just gonna wait for that to dry, 2000 wet sand it, and yeah, color. And whilst those wheels are drying, I'm gonna fix up the fairings, some sanding, some filling, and then putting some rib nuts exactly where I need them for some hidden screw holes. Okay, so it's actually 2 days later, and what I haven't shown you is that I've gone over these wheels twice again with more primer. I've sanded them, wet sanded them about 2 or 3 times down to 2000, and I think I've got a much better surface now to work with. I just wasn't happy with the single coat. And I think if I'm gonna do this bike justice, it's gotta be perfect. So now it's time for Bob to come out. And Bob is our 6 meter by 3 meter blow up spray tent. And this thing, it has to be turned on all the time, otherwise it actually deflates. So unfortunately I picked a day that looks like it's possibly going to rain, so I've got to really get this paint done in a pretty expeditious manner. I think that means fast.
The hard part about these wheels is they are so intricate. I've got holes all through the spokes. So I spent the first 30 minutes with a very fine spray set up on the gun, just trying to fill up those holes with yellow.
So we're not having a massively awesome day. That's taken me about an hour because my gun was broken, so I had to fix my gun. The power went out, so this whole thing collapsed on top of fresh paint. That was not good, so I had to re-prep the wheels, and then I've run out of paint. So I've got one coat left to do, and I've run out of paint. They're not, I mean, I could probably clear coat them the way they are, but I want these to be perfect. So beautiful wifey has gone to the shop to get me another coat of paint. Half an hour left before the shop shuts. I'll put in the order, so fingers crossed we get that shortly. This bike is turning to be my nightmare, absolute nightmare. 2025, bring it on. So whilst I'm waiting for paint, I'm just giving these a quick wet sand as well. So just 2000 grit sandpaper, nice and light, not much at all. That's all you need to do. You just got to take the top, like there'll be like a really fine rough surface if you run your finger around it. I generally find that out here on the lip is always super smooth, but in here, in these arms, just give it a quick once over. And then when our paint arrives, I've just got a wet rag here by the way. When our paint arrives, this should be dry again for the final coat. Nice, heavy final coat. Try to avoid any runs. This is like the most stressful part of every build for me. Okay, so I'm just gonna mix up some clear. I'm gonna do 3 coats of clear, about 8 to 10 minutes between each coat. I'm not gonna film that because it's just me spray painting. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna flick to it now and show you how it looks after those coats. Let's just hope I don't screw it up. So the wheels are done. They're sitting here, they're just drying. I'm actually gonna put them out in the sun to dry as well. Now, a lot of people will say they need to be baked. Yes, you can bake them. Bake them, from what I understand, and Dr. Google, baking speeds up the process. If you put them in the sun after they've hardened for 24 hours, that will also help to heat up the wheels and speed up the process, albeit a lot slower. So in 3 days, we can put tires on those. I've also got to put the spark plugs into this baby. So a new set of plugs is going in there, but next job is actually the fairing. So we've got to start prepping this fairing, and I'm going to show you what I mean, because when you buy these fairings from sort of race fairing providers, they've come out of a mold, and I don't know if you can tell. I'm just going to put this camera down for a sec. Okay, so on this, can you see that? That horizontal line just there, that's one of the mold lines. What we don't want to do is sand all the way through that and sand through the actual white gel coat. We want to keep the gel coat, but I want to smoothen off parts like that so that when I lay my paint, I'm not going to end up with a big dirty line in my paint that's super obvious. So there's a lot to do. There's all up, I think, 7 pieces of fairing. It's going to take me about an hour. I'm going to speed this whole film up, put some jazzy music on for you guys, sit back and enjoy. And right on cue, beautiful Australia, it started to rain. So next thing I'm gonna do, that took me about an hour all up, is I'm just gonna give these a really good clean down. I wanna get rid of any oil, any residue which may have sort of touched these plastics or fiberglass from my hands or from anything else that's been, whilst I've been sitting on the bike, they've probably gotten dirty. Give them a really good wipe down. You can see there's oil all over the side of this one. That's all gotta go. It's gotta come back to the cleanest possible surface you can think of, so that by the time you go to paint, by the time you go to put undercoat on, primer, it has to stick to it. So preparation is everything. Preparation is 9 out of the 10 steps. Yeah. And what most people won't tell you is how long it takes to prep. This is day 3. So we've got wheels done, we've got fairing all prepped, ready to go. I reckon I'm roughly 25 hours into it. Now we're gonna apply the high fill primer and then sand that back, wet sand it. Got a new microphone mount going on, it's pretty cool. Got that off Vintra, pretty cool YouTuber. So just putting all the hardware back on the wheels and just make sure you torque them all down to spec. And now I've got 2 wheels perfectly ready for tires. Another job done, and whilst I'm waiting for all of this to dry, I'm actually going to get these wheels in the car and go and get some nice fresh rubber put on them. I might even give this a second sand yet, and a couple more touch-ups with some straight primer, not filler primer. But it's coming together. So there you have it. I look like an absolute mess. It's been all up. I think I've spent 7 days just getting it to this stage. Like the paint prep alone took me 3 or 4 days. Just the amount of time between each step. I can't undersell it, just how much time you spend on these bikes. We've also put an MRA racing screen on it, so that looks pretty awesome. And everything now fits. The wheels look absolutely to die for. The yellow just looks absolutely sick. I love it. We've got some more yellow coming for the bike. We've got some more performance parts coming for the bike. That's it for this episode. I was going to try and completely finish the bike in this episode, but things have changed because now I need to focus on design. So instead, I'm going to have to extend this series out by 1 more episode, and we're going to do all the final design in that episode. So
We're going to do the mock-up of how we think the color scheme is going to look. We're going to do the mock-up of the decal scheme as well. Put the last couple of remaining performance parts on it. And then if we're lucky, even get it up and down the street for a quick test drive. Thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, you know the drill. This is the final episode, the R1 build. It's been epic so far, but by the end of this episode, this bike has to be complete, which means we've got to design the bike. I haven't even started. We're going to choose the style we want, race, road, that type of look. We've got to design all the decals, print the decals and put the decals on after we've painted the bike. We've got some remaining performance parts to go on the bike. There's a lot to do, so stay tuned. It's going to be huge. So we've got a huge task ahead of us, and the first job I want to do is I'm going to jump on Dr. Google and I'm going to look at some of the designs that other people have either built or conceived for their R1s. Now, this is not a professionally designed bike. I've done that before. I've done that with my V4 Panigale and other bikes where I've used the likes of Car Design and paid them to actually design the bike, and the results speak for themselves. Those bikes looked absolutely amazing. Can I emulate the same type of quality as an amateur in a garage at home? So there's two key design principles that I'm gonna adhere to hopefully in this build. One is the colors, not too many. Basically 2 colors and a neutral. So I've got the blue, I've got the gray, and then my neutral is the white. So I think that's cool. The yellow, I'm gonna say they're accents. I'm not gonna include that. So I think I've adhered to that already, and you're gonna see that blue when I break that out in the spray gun. And the next rule for me is lines. So like I said, I don't wanna do a straight racing line like other people have, but I do want to adhere to a couple of principles. I want forward facing lines and downward facing lines. I don't want upward facing lines or backward facing lines. And luckily for this bike, I've actually got some predetermined lines already on the fairing. As you can see, I've actually got lines coming through already, which sort of almost fit with the downwards hunkered forward facing racing look that I'm after. So next up, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my 5mm tape and I'm gonna start playing with some different variations on design. Where this tape runs is where the difference between the base white color and the actual feature color, either blue or gray, is going to be. I also know that I have my brand. I've got 1L Moto Design, so that needs to be on there somewhere, along with the, I guess, the theme of this bike that I've chosen, which I'm calling the R1X. Then I've designed some of those elements in Canva, and now I can print them onto vinyl. Okay, so bear with me. I think I'm onto something here. It's got the cross things across the front here. I thought we'd go with something cool like that instead of a basic number plate on the front. I reckon that's gonna stand out pretty cool. You'll see that this section in here is gonna be the blue. All of this will be white. And then where I've got this blue up the top here, just this thin line, that's gonna be like a pinstripe, probably quite a thick pinstripe of the gray that we've got. That same theme will follow along here. So I've now got the best of both lines. I know this sounds simple, but sometimes simple is subtle, subtle is good. We've got the gray pinstripe across the top. Got to remember, picture everything else pearl white. Gray pinstripe across the top, all the way back up here. We've got the massive, big, thick blue stripe coming the whole way forward through here, and then following the lines of the fairing coming down and back. Right back there, I'm not sure if I'm gonna put like a number plate board, like a dark gray number plate board or not. Okay, so I've mocked it up again. I've relayed all of my lines just to make sure they are absolutely perfect. And then I've done up some decals. So I've got Prima Pramac across the top here. Yes, I know. It's a bit of an ode to the new Yamaha theme. R1X. I don't know how this is gonna turn out with the X behind the 1, but I think that'll look cool.
on top of the blue and the gray. I'm not sure, I might move all these this way, and then the 998. So R1 998. I'm just gonna put my logo back here. So just a 1L Moto design up the top here, and that's it. So onto paint. However, check that out. That is a storm, and I don't know if I'm gonna beat this storm and not get wet.
So it took me about 2 hours to mask all the fairings up, and you've got to make it perfect. Any gaps and you'll get paint residue under them. Then it's time to fill up the paint, 2:1 ratio, and attach it to the gun, super easy. But from here, it pretty much just goes downhill.
Well, not good news. We've just had probably the worst failure I think I've had in building bikes. I've just spent God knows how many hours prepping these fairings, trying to get them perfect, and then my paint, it appears, is maybe too old. And I tried to push through, I tried thinning it out a bit more, no luck. It's just got spurts everywhere. I'm gonna have to stop, regroup, start again, go buy more paint, more thinners, just more gear, and probably wet sand these back and then start painting again, which means I've got to wait for another day, and the next 7 days is storming all day, every day. So this could be a while. Well, that was a massive shame. Everything's back here in the garage now, all drying out right here because I need to wait for it to dry. I'll put the camera down for a sec. Because I've got to sand it back again. Look at this, it's actually just completely destroyed. It just started throwing massive amounts of gunky, crappy paint at all of my fairings, and I don't know what the problem was. I think maybe the paint was expired, maybe it was too old. Either way, can't get that paint anymore. There was a custom color, that's all I had. So, conundrum. Here's a couple of options. First one is a Hyundai, however you want to say it, blue. I like that, I think that's pretty cool. I would keep the same design if I was going to use that. My only concern, maybe it's too light, too much white on the bike, maybe. Now that I've got a chance to rethink it, what about this? This is a Camaro blue, a new color. It's a metallic blue, it's darker, it looks sick. Imagine that with the white accents instead, with the decal scheme that I've done. Now there's an option. I think that would stand out in a crowd and that would look awesome. So off to the paint shop in the morning, gonna spend the next couple of hours fixing up these fairings, probably put a coat of primer filler over them again, sand them back again with wet 2000. This is building bikes, guys. This is how much work it takes. Sometimes you screw it up, sometimes you gotta start from scratch. Another day, I will say another dollar, but it's not really. We've been to the paint shop this morning and we've picked up our new paint. Oh, I hope you didn't see that. Name, because I want this to be a surprise. So, new paint. We're also going to change the way we're painting this bike. Let me show you. Okay, I've gone ahead and reversed my initial thoughts. I am now doing white accents. They're all painted. I just wanted to get them done, get them out of the way. And they're looking pretty good. I'm still prepping the nose cone because this just really got completely destroyed by that blue, crappy old paint. I've had to re-primer fill that 3 times and I'm just waiting for that to harden so I can sand it back. But in the meantime, we're gonna put a new chain on this baby. So we've just been to Moto Garage, picked up another chain. This is an RK Racing chain, 525. Let's get it on.
So I find chains get easier over time and definitely helps to have the right tools. So a Dremel with a cut disc on it and a really good chain breaking tool makes life so much easier. Next up, I'm off to Moto Mia for an awesome Brembo Corsa Quarter brake lever, and anything you need from CNC Racing, these are your suppliers. Hit them up on Instagram. Then it's back to the garage, quick install, job done. So check this out. I'm literally painting between storms. That is a pretty big contrast. Couple of rough edges there. So probably not my best ever paint job because I've had so many things go wrong. It's gonna need a bit of touch-up work. It's gonna need probably wet sand, polish, a bunch of after paint care just to make this better, but not bad for painting in a blow-up spray booth between storms. It's actually, I think 3 days later, I've been prepping and re-prepping fairings over and over. It's becoming one of those monotonous, repetitive tasks, but I wanted to take this moment out. Before we get into clear coating this bike, this is our dyno sheet. I'll put it up on screen now. 196.3 brake horsepower. Not using my regular dyno tuner, so I'm not sure how accurate it is. We'll probably do a dyno run at some point anyway, just to do a power test on it. But now it's time for clear coat. And then we've got some brake upgrades. And then I'm pretty much gonna stop filming here because if I film too much more, you're gonna see the finished bike sort of evolve. And I just wanna go bang, here it is. So without further ado, bang, here it is. So there we have it, guys. MY23R1X is what we're calling it. And the build's done. So massive thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. Thanks to all the supporters, thanks to all the people that have tuned in throughout this build. It's been pretty epic and I couldn't be more pleased with this build. It looks awesome. Massive thanks to our sponsors, Moto Garage. You guys have done a fantastic job on this build. Next up, I think we need to build a road bike. I'm pretty sure you'll agree.